In today's episode, we're going over how to be an effective leader as a physical therapist with Mike Reinold. I personally feel like the advancement in your career as a physical therapist is a little bit odd. So you start off with treating patients, right? And you start getting very good at treating patients. And over the course of time, if you want to advance in your career, you actually start moving away from patient care, right? Which is not always what you want to do as a physical therapist because we get into this career to treat patients. Inevitably, it's something that happens. You start managing people, maybe you own a business, maybe you start taking more of a leadership role within a community. And eventually, you have to be a leader, right? And I don't know about you, but I didn't get any education on how to be an effective leader in physical therapy school. So I think for a lot of folks, two things, right? So once we get into a place where we have to be an effective leader, what do we do, right? How do you become an effective leader? And then for some folks that might actually want to become leaders, right? So for me, I'd like to become a physical therapy leader, thought leader, someone who's going to push evidence-based practice into the fitness realm, help folks, clinicians in that area, right? How do I lead more effectively? So a lot of folks are looking for that. Today, I have Mike Reinold on the podcast, and we're going to talk about how he's become a leader over the course of time and share some tips with you guys to help with your career too.
Mike, what's going on? How you doing today?
Hey Dan, appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me back. Another great episode, another great some good questions to answer. So appreciate you having me on again.
Yeah, for sure. We talked a lot about your career, and it's just interesting as an bystander, taking a look at your career and how it's kind of progressed over the course of time. Over the course of time, you become more and more of a leader, right? So initially, I think it was kind of like probably a leader within your local community. Maybe that's going to be like the baseball organization, right, with Red Sox. And then it seemed like you started to spread within the research world and the larger physical therapy community, right? And then you've kind of shifted over to Champion, which you're the CEO, owner, co-founder with Lenny Macrina, and you're a leader for us. And then now you are the head of the sports section of the American Physical Therapy Association, the president, right?
Yep.
And it's funny talking to you. It seems like these things have just been kind of like, all right, I'm doing this and I'm pushing into this role, and then I'm doing this for a while and I'm pushing in this role. And you've just taken on a lot of responsibility from a leadership perspective, right? And I wanted to get your take on how to be an effective leader, right? How you've kind of done it over the course of time, and maybe some tips for other folks that are trying to be a leader within their community. Because, obviously I think folks like this, but having the respect, admiration, and being a leader in your community, I think is a great lifelong goal that people should shoot for, because it's going to lead to a lot of happiness, right? Which I think is good. And I know this is a loaded question. I'll try to guide you through it a little bit, but how did this happen? What's the start of all of this?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, things just evolve, right? And I'm actually at the point now where I'm starting to wonder if it's evolved too far, right? So, I definitely lead more now than I ever have. And I think you can even argue that I am leading more than doing now, which it's funny, like the parallel in a small like part for physical therapy. This is like that really good clinician that gets promoted to be like the clinic manager, and you're like, wow, you really connect with the patients, you're great at outcomes, like you're good diagnostics and great exercise progression. Like, maybe you should work on the budget, right? And you're like, wait, that doesn't make sense.
Whoa,
Right,
whoa,
like,
whoa.
yeah, exactly, like, how does that all go together? But to me, I see that's like how it's evolved over time. I think it comes down to me is that I like to build, right? And we talked previously like that. I think I'm creative. I think a lot of us are creative that get into this business. So I like to build things, right? And what you learn as you get older and you start doing more is that to build things is that you need teams to help them kind of grow. So what happens is you start developing your leadership skills is that you can grow exponentially because you start realizing that leadership is more about putting in other people in position to succeed than you, right? And I think that's why most people fail as leaders early on, like I did. I mean, I was a terrible leader, I'm sure, at the beginning. I still have flaws with some of my leadership skills too. But I think one of the big things that that I did that got me here is that you start to lead for the right reason because you want to help other people succeed. And I think that's why it tends to steamroll a bit. Like the president of the sports academy is a great example, right? Like that, why did I do that? Right? Like that's like that's a big role and a big time consuming thing. But I sincerely felt that at this point in my career, it's probably now or never, because I think next, as go through another president, if I were to try to do this again in the future, I think I'd probably be a little bit more out of touch with the younger clinicians, right? I'd be a little bit more out of it, right? So I think I was at a really good sweet spot, like at my age and experience level, where I could offer something to give back. So how do you get there? I think you just get thrust there with experience and time. But how do you stay there and how do you thrive there? I think the biggest key for me is you have to get out of that you're leading because you want control, and that you're leading to help build something bigger and better, and to help other people succeed, right? And that is sincerely where I am now with my leadership now. And I say this, it's odd to think this, but I 100% think that I am on the descend of my career, not the ascend anymore. And now it's time to help the people that are below me leapfrog me and become better than me when they get to my point in my career. And I think that's what it's all about, right? I think that's why we do what we do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty good. I like that. And one of the things that, we've been talking about this, spoiler alert, this is the third podcast that we recorded, in a row. And we already covered this, but I think part of it too is that you worked very hard, and you did say this a little bit, but you got really good at something specific. And then someone else is like, wow, this guy's really good. We should give him an opportunity to do X. Right. And you're like, all right, I'll do that. And I think, especially with the kind of what you had just mentioned a bit, is that it's not always exactly what you want to do. Right. It's
Right.
like, all right, I'm really
Right.
enjoying what I'm doing, getting great outcomes. My patients love me. All right. This is an opportunity. It's not really what I want to do, though. It's actually
Right.
a little bit outside of what I would like to do, because I'm doing something a bit different. It's more challenging. I'm not as good at it quite yet. But you took that challenge, right, the opportunity, and you kind of ran with it a little bit, right? So I think that hard work, getting very good at what you do, led to the opportunity, And I think the other part that was, was very impactful was talking about a role as a leader. And it's interesting because you can kind of boil it down to a leader to maybe this statement itself is that your job is to make the people around you better, right? It's not just being good yourself. I think when people think about a leader, they think about all the positive qualities, which is funny because being a leader is about making everyone else around you good and not yourself just good, right?
Right.
So that's an interesting way to go about it. If I want to be a better leader, how do I make folks around me better, right?
Right.
I thought
Yeah.
that was
Right.
impactful.
Well, I mean, and think about what we do, and think about my background that we talked about in the past episode too, if you haven't listened to them. But remember, like service-based industry, right? So that's kind of what we are as a profession. And then I think the thing that I really pride myself on is that I really enjoy educating and sharing that out there. So think about that. If you're a service-based, education-based leader, right? Well, that's a great type of leader versus like a leader that's doing it for either power or influence or control, that sort of thing, right? We come from a service-based industry, and I like that concept of educating. So to me, it's more like mentorship based leadership than anything else. And just like our past conversations, what an authentic approach, because guess who's going to have amazing outcomes is that team that's in that environment, not the one where it's like I'm leading just with the outcome of like let's produce revenue or I want to get a promotion, right? No, it's about how do you build an awesome team to produce an awesome outcome, right? When you think of it that way, I think as physical therapists and then educators, I think we're in a unique position where we're used to leading that way with our clients. Like we're like micro leaders with our clients. It's just trying to apply those same principles as you grow through that leadership thing. But everybody struggles with that. I struggle with that at the beginning. There's pressure, right? You get into a leadership position, you want to succeed to the people above you. So when that pressure breaks you down a little bit, that's when you start, probably leading poorly because you're worried about the expectations of the person above you instead of the actual outcome. And I think that's where a lot of people get in trouble early on. I know that's where I did.
Yeah. I want to go back to the beginning. There's a lot you just said there. But one of the ones that I think
Sorry.
that was good stuff. I want to go back to this idea of the service industry, right? Service-based industry. I don't know that the mentality of a lot of folks in healthcare is of a service-based industry, right? I think part of it is that if you're a physical therapist and someone comes in and they've got, let's say, Achilles tendinopathy, right? It's very much like, I'm the dictator. You do this. You have
Right.
Achilles tendinopathy. Research says this. Do this, this, and this, right? If you don't listen to
Right.
me, you can get out and talk to someone else, right? But if you went
Right.
to the grocery store, right, and you were talking to the clerk, it's like, I want this bread here. I actually really like bread. And the clerk's like, dude, you're fat. You can't eat that. It's bad for you, right? You'd be like, this is
Right.
terrible service, you know? But
Yeah.
if you flip
Right.
it from the physical therapy realm, I think there's a lot of that mentality in the healthcare world. And it's like, of course, right? We need to make sure that we're giving people effective treatments, right? But the other
Right.
part is like, you have to understand the spirit of the industry is service based. You're trying to provide a service to help someone, right?
Right.
And
Right.
that probably goes a long way with patient outcomes, and then eventually working towards this idea of being a leader, right?
Right, right. And I think I see that with some upcoming clinicians, right? Some ECPs and students that they, man, I just got this doctorate degree. I'm a doctor, right? So like, and I've looked at the research. I know the answer to this, right? And they're very firm, or maybe they take offense when a patient doesn't 100% agree with the game plan. I just think you got to take a step back, and you got to think that person hired you to help them achieve their goal, right? It's not about your goal for them, it's about their goal, right? And a lot of people don't think of it that way, and they don't like it when it doesn't go their way. I tell that from people. I had a conversation yesterday, right, with a Major League Baseball pitcher, right, like in the big leagues, like he's a pitcher, right? And I just like go like, look, here's where we're at. Season's almost over. You look like this. Here's what I think you should do. You take that and run with it. We got to work on your workload a little bit. You take that and run with it. I'm not going to dictate what you do on day one, day two, day three, right after your start. But I'm going to say we need to decrease your work a little bit. Let's work together. Where can we cut back a little bit, right? And that's a much more refreshing approach to the person. But if you think you know all the answers, or you think it's just a black and white answer, then I think you're going to be wrong more often than you're not, because the answer is almost always somewhere in the middle.
So, guys, if you like what you're learning about so far, then I want you to go and check out the Fitness Pain Free Mini Course. So, I made a mini course. It's absolutely free. That's the next logical step if you want to learn more from me. So, in the course, we go over 5 lessons. That first lesson is how traditional schooling has failed us, right? So, schooling is phenomenal from a physical therapy perspective, but doesn't really teach you how to work with high level athletes in the fitness world, right? Doesn't always teach you how to do the lifts appropriately. Doesn't teach you about progressions and regressions of common lifts within the gym. Doesn't teach you how to program normally, how to write rehab programs, or how to write injury prevention programs for these folks. Next thing we go over, 7 reasons why people get hurt in the gym. 4 simple steps to getting your clients out of pain. How to build the career of your dreams and earn the respect of your community. It's all well and good if you know exactly how to work with folks within the gym. But if you can't get these folks through the door on a regular basis, then you're simply not going to be living the dream that you want to, because you can't get the patients through the door that you want to work with. Okay. So I'll show you how to do that. And lastly, we'll talk a little bit about the Fitness Pain Free certification, right? So I'll leave a link in the show notes. I definitely recommend checking this out. Once you sign up for the Fitness Pain Free Mini Course, you will be automatically placed in the waitlist for the Fitness Pain Free certification. Now, the Fitness Pain Free certification is the course, the certification that I wish I had as a new grad, that fills in all the gaps in knowledge that you don't get in physical therapy school. So, A, you'll gain complete confidence working with injuries in the strength and fitness world. You'll learn optimal technique for both health and performance from myself and some of the best coaches in the world. You'll master programming for rehabilitation and injury prevention. Have fun while earning a whole bunch of physical therapy and physical therapy assistant credits. You have 31.5 of those. You'll also gain NSCA credits as well as CrossFit credits if you need those. This is the equivalent of a university education in working with injuries in the weight room. I really believe that. I've been adding to this thing over the past 5 or 6 years. It's massive, a ton of phenomenal information. And lastly, the biggest goal is just to fill your day with the patients you love working with and building the respect and admiration of the communities you love working with. So I'll leave a link in the show notes. Sign up for the Fitness Pain Free Mini Course. The certification is open
4 times per year for 1 week to enroll into. If you're on the wait list by signing up for the Fitness Pain-Free Mini Course, I'll alert you when that next enrollment period is open and you can get started. Let's get back to the show now. Yeah, I like that. I'm going to flip this just a little bit because I feel like I've experienced this through you as an employee as well, and it's always interesting because my entire life, whenever I'm applying for a job, it's basically, how can I be the best employee for this organization, right? I want to fit whatever role, whatever need they have so I can build this organization, right, as best as possible, because that seems like what a good employee should do. And I remember when I started working at Champion, you're like, well, what do you want to do? What are your goals? I want to make sure that we build you in a way that feels fulfilling and you have good growth within the company, right? So you kind of extended that service-based mentality over to me. And when I heard that, I was like, I don't know. I'm not even sure what I want to do, because I was just so ready to just be like, I got whatever needs to be taken care of. I'll do it. I want to do this and that and whatever you need. But that's a great thing to hear. It's one of the things I'm trying to do now as I'm trying to build my own business. It's basically, if you hire an employee and you're trying to lead people, obviously they need to feel happy and fulfilled in their job, and you want to use them to their best abilities, right? So you're trying to figure out what those are so they feel happy. At the end of the day, people have to work for a company. You don't have to, you can start your own business, but it's important for those folks to feel fulfilled and having a good life. So, as a leader, I think oftentimes you're trying to figure out, how do we make this a win-win? How do we promote both folks? So both people, both companies, right? The company and the employee can kind of grow together,
Right.
type of deal.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, if the employees grow, then everybody grows. I mean, I think that's the point. If all you're worried about is the company growing, then I think that's actually going to slow your growth.
Yeah. I do have a quick story. I know this is your time, but I think this is relevant.
I like it.
Yeah. When I first started working at Champion, I was at a clinic out in Colorado. I actually liked the clinic a lot. But I was just fighting hard for a pull-up bar. I was like, I really wanted a pull-up bar. I was like, we can do so much stuff. We can hang out TRX from it. We can get bands there. We do all sorts of things, right?
What
And
a
the clinic
funny
was,
comment, by the way.
I know. Yeah.
In retrospect, that's funny, but yeah, keep going.
Yeah. I think a lot of other clinicians are like that. They're like, man, I really want to get some weights for the clinic, or, I wish I could have some turf or whatever it is to help their patients, right? And oftentimes places are on a budget. They can't always make it happen. I understand that, right? I'm not upset about it. But when I came to Champion, Mike asked me, what kind of rig do you want? And I was like, rig? You mean like a big old squat rack kind of rig? What are you talking about, rig? Tractor trailer rig? Or no, like a road rig. Like, what? And it just hit me like, did you just say that? What are you talking about? Just because I so badly wanted a pull-up bar, and here I am asking what kind of rig I want. I've never thought of that because it was just so far beyond what I was the baseline of what I was asking for. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and guess who has succeeded so much since then? Both you and us together as a team, because you have all the tools you need and you want, and you've grown as a clinician since then because you've had access to these things, right? So now all of a sudden you're 10 times better clinician than you probably were in Colorado, right? Because you've been able to do these things and have these experiences in there, and that's what helps you grow. So yeah, that's awesome to hear. I love it, man. That's
Cool.
1-0 for the pull-up bar. I like it.
For sure. Kind of going back to this whole idea of leadership, and then your career, it's kind of built up, crescendo, and now you kind of believe that it's going down a bit. I'm still rooting for Mike. I'm kind of curious what you feel those next steps are. I know you want to build people around you, any other specifics or kind of where you see the career going at this point?
I'm definitely at a point where I'm not 100% sure, but I'm definitely at a point where things have evolved, and I'm still internally trying to figure out if I love it or where I want to go. I think you could also argue that I'm way too overbooked at this point. So I don't even know if it's a fair assessment, right? So I definitely think my next thing I'm going to do is probably to take a step back on the quantity of things and just really focus on, getting back to those things that, you're passionate about, and really focusing on them. And I think that is an interesting ebb and flow of a career, right? Is that you come full circle and you come back to the thing that you're most passionate about, and focus the most time on it. I think you could argue that's career success right there, is that you put yourself in your position where you can do that. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll do another episode in 5 years and see where we're at.
That's funny. Yeah, it'll be episode 600 for the Ask Mike Reinold show. We'll cover that.
I like it. That'd be fun.
That's amazing. Imagine getting 1,000 podcast episodes. We're on our way. It's like, it's actually ridiculous.
I completely agree. It's relentless is what it is. We just don't know any other way, right?
Yeah, for sure. All right, just a little quick recap for all the listeners here so get some out of it. Mike has found his way into a leadership role, by putting a lot of effort in at the beginning and then take advantages of opportunities as they arise because people saw him as a good leader, right? He was in a very specific niche. So it was kind of nice because you usually get opportunities within that niche, right? So you can continue growing with that passion over the course of time. Naturally, as Mike has gotten these leadership roles, the emphasis has kind of switched a bit. It's like, how can we make other people around me better than me, right? To do the jobs I was once doing, right? So they can do an even better job. We can build these bigger systems, right? So champion, right? Maybe some of the online business stuff that you're doing. Also with the APTA in the sports section, we're elevating everyone else around us in the process, right? I think the last one was just that customer service element, right? We're trying to support the people around us, and that's not just with their patients, because we're obviously leaders with our patients, but it's also going to be your employees, right? And also, I think largely you do this, but it's just everyone around you, right? If you have an online presence, you're trying to serve those folks, help those folks, right? And naturally, that's going to make you a leader because you're trying to solve these problems. And people really appreciate that, and they see you as a leader in the process. Right. So
that's great.
Anything else to add to that?
No, that was awesome. Yeah, I appreciate it. That was a great summary.
Yeah, sweet. All right. Well, guys, if you have been living underneath a rock and you have never been to MikeReinold.com, I think you should definitely check that out. Mike's had a ton of great content. I would definitely sign up for his newsletter. He's got a great newsletter. Every week I learn something. I actually want to open the newsletter, so I recommend checking that out. He has a bunch of great products too. Definitely take a look. He's been producing content for, 15 years now. How long have you been doing this, Mike?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, crazy.
Since the onset of the internet. But anyway, thank you, Mike. Where can people find you?
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, no, head to MikeReinold.com. I think that's where you can get my socials, you can get the podcast, my courses, everything. So, yeah, just really appreciate the opportunity. It was fun to have these chats too, not just talk about the shoulder. So, appreciate it, Dan. Good topics. Thanks for asking me.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. So, guys, that is it for the lesson today, but that is not it for your learning. So, when you graduate as a physical therapist, sometimes you're not in your dream job, and I get it. It takes a lot of effort to work in the population you want and really look forward to the patients that you see every single day. So I made a lesson for you. It's another fitness pain-free show. It's called 5 Steps to Earning the Respect of Your Community and Building the Career of Your Dreams. We'll just dive deep on this subject so you can start working with the population that you love. This way, every single Sunday, you won't have the Sunday scaries because you don't want to go into work Monday morning because you got a whole bunch of patients on your panel that you don't feel like working with. Let me show you how to track the population that you love working with. So every single day you love your life, right? And you love your work. So go ahead and click on this link above and get started on that lesson. Lastly, thank you so much for your support. You truly allow me to do what I love for a living. If you're watching this on YouTube, please hit that like button. Comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Am I missing anything? I would love to hear your comments on this. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you're listening to the podcast version of this video, please leave me a positive rating and review. It helps me out tremendously. If you want to go that extra step and support me further, please consider subscribing to Fitness Pain-Free Insiders. It's a comprehensive educational resource and toolkit for the fitness and rehab professional. Think Netflix, but for trainers and physical therapists. It's premium content from me. I update this every month. I've been doing it for the past 5 years. It's an absolute ridiculous amount of information. You've got over 100 webinars, ebooks, and complete guides. You have access to a private Facebook group to have all your questions answered by me. You can decide some upcoming podcast topics. I'd love to answer questions that you have. So you get started for $1 for a week trial. After that, it's $12.99 per month, right? Dirt cheap. It is a no-brainer if you want to try to learn more from me. So I'm going to leave a link in the show notes. You can check that out. You can also head to fitnesspainfree.com, click on the programs link, and click on Fitness Pain-Free Insiders Online Library to get started. All right, you won't be disappointed. That is it for today's episode, guys. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you on the next one.